Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope you're all having a great day. Welcome to our TSMU Q&A series. Hi, Megan.
Hello, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. It's great to see you. We have our matching headsets on.
I know, had to.
Had to. Happy Women's History Month, everyone, and happy belated International Women's Day. I am your host, Emily Kroll. I am the Esports and Influencer Marketing Manager at Logitech. And today we're joined by the amazing Megan Holgate. She is the Director of Partnerships at TSM Megan, so glad you're here with us. How's your week going?
Thank you. It's good. It's been super busy, which is par for the course, and all good things, keeping things interesting. How about you?
Good. My week is great. Thank you for asking. Oh
I
my goodness. Hello, everyone. So sorry for the technical difficulties.
We are
Megan,
back.
we're back. Thank you for your patience all around. I think we're going to just restart here. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds great.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, everyone, this is Megan Holgate, one of the most incredible human beings on the planet. She is the Director of Partnerships at TSM I'll quickly go through how to ask your questions, and then Megan, I would love for you to introduce yourself. So we're pulling questions from our TSMU Discord. So if you have a question for Megan, head to discord.gg/TSMU and ask your question in the Q&A questions channel. So Megan, please tell us a bit about yourself and what you do in your role as Director of Partnerships.
Hi. Okay. Happy to. First of all, thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting. Yes, as Emily said, I'm the director on the TSM team, which means I oversee our full partnerships team. So across all of our partners, I'm responsible for really building those relationships and making sure that as a team, we are delivering on everything we promised and really making sure to take advantage of every opportunity to ensure great results across the board. Should I go into background too?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Perfect. Well, how I got here is kind of a long story. I've been my career for about 15 years. I started at Sony Pictures Entertainment within the digital marketing division. So I was kind of an in-house agency for the theatrical, home entertainment, and TV divisions across Sony Pictures Entertainment. So back in the day, not to date myself, social didn't exist. So we really focused on email blasts, on building websites, on creating interactive experiences. I spent about 7 or 8 years there. So a really long time, really great start to my career. I then jumped over to a different team where I continued focusing on digital activations, worked with partners like Mattel, DreamWorks, continuing with kind of app builds, game builds, websites. And from there, social had really taken off and become really a potential career. And it hadn't been when I was first out of college. So I was able to jump over to a team called McBeard, which later was acquired by Fullscreen, and really worked closely with major brands to help them build their social presence. So worked with Disney, Uber, HP, a number of really awesome clients to help them establish their presence across all social platforms and to create that content for them. And then about a year ago, I was able to join the TSM team. So it was really my first foray into full esports, even though I've kind of dabbled in gaming in the past. So now we are here.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. You gave everyone such great fuel for some really intense questions, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm scared.
Um, no, I'm so excited to hear more about your experience. And our first question actually is a really great segue from the experiences you just shared. So, Bad Emperor asks, what specific factors made you want to enter the esports scene?
That is a great question. So many things, I guess. So towards the end of my last role, I did a couple of activations in gaming. So I worked with Prime Gaming. I did a little work with HP Omen, the team over there, and really was just able to kind of see the level of excitement and passion that the gaming space as a whole. And the more I started diving in there, the exponentially the space is growing.
Mhm.
It's at a really exciting time where a ton of orgs and teams and everything have gone from being very small to suddenly really expanding and growing at a rapid rate. And also, I'm personally maybe a little competitive, so entering kind of the esports scene was seemed like a really great fit for me because it's a lot of fun. So that's kind of how I ended up here. I've just started keeping my eye. TSM reached out, and the team was just incredible, and everything we're doing here is incredible, and so I couldn't pass it up.
Amazing. And I would definitely second that. The team is so much fun to work with. And all the times that we work together, Megan, were just so amazing. So um, they're very lucky to have you.
We have fun.
Our next question comes from Nymphonics. And they've asked, throughout college, what actions did you take to stay ahead and start your career early at Sony Pictures?
Love that. Great question. Throughout college, I went to USC, and I was really lucky that USC did an incredible job of presenting a lot of opportunities, of inviting students to one-off luncheons, to meet and greets, to all kinds of things like that. And that's actually how I landed my first role at Sony Pictures. I was a student within the Annenberg School and received a notification that they were going to be having a small like lunch and learn session with somebody from the Sony Pictures Entertainment team, Christy Aubrey, shout out. She was there and just spoke to us about what she was doing and the work that was being done. And I just was captured by it. I had never stopped to think that that in itself was a whole career, even back then. So I spent a little bit of time after and spoke with her, and then was consistent about following up and sharing my resume when it was time to get close to graduation. And it just so happened that there was really great timing and there was a role opening up right as I was graduating. So in addition to that, though, I would say I did a number of internships. Throughout college, I was not totally confident what direction I would be going. So I did an internship in PR. I did an internship in a million different things. And that really did help me kind of hone in on what it is that I really enjoyed doing. And then the meet with Christy and the opportunity at Sony Pictures was really just the pinnacle moment. So I would say, take advantage of every opportunity you can. Take advantage of things like this. TSMU is such an incredible resource, and I am just so grateful for the team that really runs this and puts this on, because I think it's really opening up a window into an industry and hopefully giving people this inside access to what it looks like and what an actual day to day looks like in these various careers.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let me see if we've got any day-to-day questions. I don't think we have one just yet. So, can you please tell us a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like at TSM?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I love is that it's never the same. I can guarantee that there will be a lot of emails. But beyond that, every day is a little bit different, right? Sometimes we'll have a day stacked full of partner calls, and we get to just kind of really talk to people throughout the day and figure out where status our activations. Some days we're really just focused on building decks and building out activations and checking in on reports and seeing how things are performing. Sometimes we're on set. I was on set for a production just a week ago with some of our talent in partnership with the Lenovo team. So things like that keep it interesting, keep it exciting. You never really know what's going to come your way. Other than the
That's
emails, there
awesome.
will always be emails.
There will always be emails. And I did hear about that shoot. I heard it was a great time.
I'm so excited for that content to release. Should be another week
Uh,
or so.
I can't wait to see it. Our next question comes from Island, and he's asked, what is your least favorite part about your job, and what is your favorite?
I'll start with a favorite actually, because I was just touching on it. I love our content. I love creating our content. It's I think TSM has one of the best content teams in the industry. The quality of work that they produce is just exceptional. And it's always been really fun for me to see things go from concept through production to being a completed asset, and working with our partners along the way to establish what are we trying to accomplish in this? How do we marry two brands together, bring TSM and our partner brands together, and in doing so, create content that our audience want to see and will find entertaining. In alignment with that, of course, is just working with our partners. I think I joke about the number of emails and calls there are, but that's why I do what I do. It's because I love it. I love to talk to people and get to know them and build those relationships and figure out what they're looking for, figure out what they need in order to be successful, and find a way to make that happen for them. Least favorite, gosh, technical difficulties like we had earlier.
Me
Uh,
too.
I think least favorite would probably have to just be that it is a ever evolving space, and with that come sudden last minute changes. But at the same time, that is what keeps it really exciting. It's what keeps us on our toes. If a tournament changes at the last minute and a player is no longer available to be in a piece of content that we have slated to shoot, we have to be nimble, we have to be flexible, we have to figure out what the next best thing is and just be ready to tackle that challenge. So, not to cheat the answer on that a little bit, but sometimes it's the hardest things that keep it the most interesting.
Ooh, yeah. I love that answer. And in line with the content, I would love to know, out of content that is already out and available, do you have a favorite piece of content that you've gotten to work on?
At TSM or in general?
Ooh, let's do both.
Oh, both. So TSM, there have been a couple. I think one of my favorites is the one that you were referencing in the pipeline. So should be releasing soon. We did a really fun piece for GM with our R6 team,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's
That
called
one's
R6
great.
Makes An EV.
Yes.
It's one of the times where we just had to really lean to the fact that it was a promotional piece, and
Yep.
have fun with it. And thankfully, our R6 team was on board and just really went all in. And it was just a great time. So personally, I loved it because it was fun to be on set. It was fun to work with the team. And I think we ended up producing a piece of content that really met all of GM's asks while having a lot of fun and really putting our team in a great light. So that was a good one. We definitely have a few more in the pipeline that I'm excited for, but that's probably one of the faves.
Awesome. I love it. That was a great video. Our next question comes from Cece, and she has asked, what does your communication strategy look like?
Do a lot of it all of the time.
Yes.
But truthfully, yeah, I think my approach to communication, and this applies both internally, right, with our own team, along with our partners, is just to over communicate as much as humanly possible.
Mhm.
Sometimes it will even feel like it's getting a bit excessive, right? Like we just had a call. I'm going to follow up and send you an email that says the exact same thing. And then in a day, I'm going to follow up on that email and see or sometimes it seems like overkill, but I've always found that that's the best way to approach it, and that's the best way to keep things from falling through the cracks. Constantly checking in with each other internally, saying, do you have this? Do I have this? Want to make sure that it doesn't slip, and really just be as clear and concise as possible. That goes for email and written, I would say. For emails, I sometimes still to this day, 15, 16, 17 years into my career, I will write an email and I will go back through and read that email 3 times sometimes, especially if it's longer, and figure out what do I not need here? What can I cut
Uh-huh.
out? What words are excessive? Where is there a possibility that something could be misunderstood or misread or misinterpreted, and how can I clarify that? Because especially in an age where so much communication happens in writing, whether it's on Slack or email, it's just extra important to make sure that we're as clear as possible, because you don't have the benefit of being on a call all the time or being face to face as often as we used to, where we could really read the room that much more. So a long-winded way of saying really clear, concise, constant communication. I guess those are my 3 C's.
Love it. For Cece to ask the question. Oh, that's incredible. I love an alliteration. Our next one is coming in from LJ, and they have asked if you have any advice for following a career path like yours. Nice question.
Thanks. I guess my advice would be just to always pursue what excites you the most. I I mean, I've always known that I started off in a career in entertainment because I loved entertainment. I was always fascinated by it, and that is what led me to realizing that I was having a really great time focusing on youth culture and creating websites and apps for Mattel and DreamWorks. That took me there. From there, I realized something that I was loving about what I was doing was really kind of being able to showcase the brand and showcase characters in the best way possible. And then that took me into social and really brand building. And so I would just say be open minded, be flexible, be ready to see what comes next, and just really continue to focus on what are you loving most about your day, right? What gets you up in the morning? And that sounds so cliche, and I know people say it all of the time, but I will reiterate it. Really leaning into what you have the most fun doing, and eventually you'll find your way to do that all the time.
I love that advice. And I think we live in a time where maybe this is not unique to this time, but I think people so often ask what your 5-year plan is or 3-year plan. And in my perspective, it's always just so nice to have a general sense of where you want to be, but
Mhm.
just kind of letting life take you there.
Absolutely. Because for a lot of people, I mean, myself included, again, social wasn't a job when I
Right.
graduated. I couldn't have said in 5 years I want to be a director at a social agency because that really wasn't a thing yet.
Right.
And the way that the industry, especially this one, continues to evolve, that can still be the case. Like the job that you may be meant to fulfill may not exist yet. So again, really just taking baby steps, small pivots to kind of make sure that you end up where you're meant to be.
I love that. I love that. Our next question is coming in from the chat, and it's from Tatum Bayako. They've asked, regarding brand partnerships with influencers, what are some of the most engaging and successful campaigns you've run?
That is a great question. There's a lot, I would say. I mean, across TSM and past experience, I honestly don't know if I could put my finger on just one. I would say the tactics that we use that have made them the most successful is just really leaning into, again, knowing what the brand was looking for and then making sure that we did, again, sounds a bit cliche, but as authentic of an activation as possible. Finding the influencer, or in the case of TSM, the player, the competitive player that makes the most sense for that and whose audience will be the most receptive for it. So it's a lot of different funnels to find your way into what makes the most sense. But I mean, for example, this is not probably the best content we ever created. But in my last role with Fullscreen, we worked with Invisalign, and they wanted
Mm,
to tap into a specific younger audience. And so we literally went through our full roster of influencers and found ones that were either in the process of getting braces or were planning on it within the next few years. And we're like, hey, this is an opportunity. Are you interested? So again, it really comes back to being authentic. Like this creator wanted to do this anyway,
yeah.
and it's speaking to their audience, and it's doing things that the audience that they would have wanted to hear. And so it's again, it's coming back to trying to make it true as possible.
Yes. Authenticity is always the way to go, and almost especially in the gaming and esports industry.
Yes, 100%. And that's not always incredibly easy, right? Like sometimes
Right.
that's with our endemic partners that make keyboards and headsets, like that's a really easy fit. And that's where the fun challenge is, I think, is for our non-endemic partners, like really honing in on what makes the most sense, and finding and really understanding our players enough to say, this is the player to use and this is why.
Yes, absolutely. And we live in a time too where everyone is aware of influencer marketing and everyone's aware of brand partnerships. And it's almost like you need to take that veil down and say, like, yes, this is a partnership opportunity that we're
Right.
pursuing here. But we're gonna do it in the most authentic and most fun way possible.
Exactly. Yeah, own it and then have fun with it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Our next question is coming in from Cece, and she has asked, how do you effectively set micro objectives that will help you reach your overall goals?
That is a very good question as well. That's fun because if we're just talking about like goal setting, right? I actually have a goal setting workshop scheduled with my team for tomorrow morning. So
Nice.
get excited, guys. I hope it's successful. But one thing that I will be talking about tomorrow is setting SMART goals. I don't know if you're familiar with SMART goals, Emily. Um, but
No.
Google them. It's just a really wonderful approach to setting goals that are attainable. So each letter of SMART represents a different approach. So specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based, I think they are.
Mm,
And so,
yes.
so part of that is really sitting down and thinking, don't just say, in 3 months, I'm going to be hired by X company. It's sitting down and saying, okay, well, within the next 2 weeks, this is achievable. I want to really have a polished resume. I want it to be perfectly buttoned up and ready to go. Within the next couple of months, I want to have applied to X number of orgs. And it's going through and setting micro goals that are achievable, because sometimes we get so excited about what we want to do and what we want to accomplish, right? That we set this huge goal, and when it doesn't happen, when we don't get from point A to point F in a couple of weeks, it's really disheartening and it's frustrating. So by setting these smaller, actionable goals, we're able to find moments of success. And then you have to take a break and celebrate that success before taking the
Yes.
next step. And every step of the way, it's moving you further up that ladder and closer to that end goal and that end result.
Awesome
That's what I
advice.
do.
Yes. If you guys have extra seats, just invite me to that goal workshop tomorrow.
You're always invited, Emily.
Yes. That's awesome. And thank you for the advice. I'm going to try that out too.
Yeah, you bet.
Our next question comes in from LJ, and they've asked, what internships and positions should we be looking for as college students and new grads to get into the entertainment or streaming industry in the account management or partnerships department?
Good question. And I think you kind of answered it in the question because what I'll say is LinkedIn is so beautiful. It's so massive. There's so much there. And I mean, that platform is just, I'm aging myself again. That platform has really just evolved and expanded so much over the course of my career. Now, when I look at it, I'm like, this is just brilliant.
Yeah.
But I would just go into the job settings, and I think you can filter by internships. I'm not sure
Hmm.
actually.
I think so.
But it's a good place to start, right? And I would say do exactly what you just said is look for account management, search by keywords like account management, partnerships, and then you have to kind of hone in based on what area you want to go, right? So well, I guess if it is partnerships, you search by partnerships. Or if you know a certain area you want to focus on is social, and also tap in the keyword of social. Because at the end of the day, you can have an internship that's not exactly in the same field, but as long as you're building skill sets, I think that are transferable, that's the most important thing. And that's what I've really found over the last 15 years is maybe, role one to role two weren't identical, but I was able to say I did these same skills though. It was about relationship building, or it was about understanding an audience across social, and knowing kind of how those skills will ladder up again to the kind of the end result, will really help. I'm not sure if I answered
Yes.
that at all.
No, I think you did. And if I may even add, there's an alert setting that you can set on LinkedIn as well. So
Yes.
if you do your search and you find some interesting roles that you want to apply for, you can also just check a box or sign up for some alerts, and it'll send an automated email to your inbox with other roles that might be interesting to you based on what you've clicked on. So I agree. LinkedIn is an incredible tool. Yeah. Our next question comes in from Cece again. Cece and LJ, thank you both for all the questions. What
I'm
are
so
the
honored.
biggest, I know, what are the biggest obstacles you face when it comes to implementing growth initiatives?
Good question. How much time do we have left? There's always a couple of different factors. Sometimes the biggest challenge is really making sure that you can get all stakeholders on board. Sometimes at the end of
Mhm.
the day, it's just that. Like you can have a brilliant idea or think you have a brilliant idea, and it may get through the first two rounds of review with a partner or with a client, and get shot down by round three, or get challenged, which sometimes is the best thing that can happen, right? Like every time something gets challenged or questions get asked, you learn a little bit more about what the end goal is, what the end result is, and you can kind of tweak and continue to shape whatever the idea is, or the activation, or the plan, to really make sure it's as successful as possible. And then second to that, I would say time. Sometimes sometimes there's just not enough time to really flesh things out as much as you really want to, and you kind of have to just go in guns blazing and see what happens, and then learn from it and say, okay, on the second time we're going to A/B test this, and we're going to tweak something a little bit on the second time. But I think there's also a lot of value to that, and a lot of times we do that in, right? Like we go into something saying, let's test and learn. It's so important to see, like, we acknowledge we may not know exactly what's going to hit the mark 100% of the time, but we know that we'll try something and we'll see how it performs, and then we'll learn from that and we'll try again. And every time we do that, we're going to get better and stronger and closer to reaching that audience, reaching that target, whatever it is, to really grow the campaign the way that we had hoped. So testing
Amazing.
and
And
learning, I guess. Yeah.
yes, the testing and learning concept applies to so much of marketing, especially
Everything.
as quickly as the landscape is changing, not just the esports landscape, but the social landscape,
Oh,
all of
yeah.
it. All of the factors that intertwine. It's ever changing and evolving. So always testing and learning is an incredible practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our next question comes from ASL06, and he has asked, as someone who's looking into a career in the entertainment industry, specifically theater and esports for him, is there any general advice or things to consider for someone wanting to do something in entertainment?
General advice for somebody wanting to do something in entertainment. I think it all comes back to building those experiences. So, kind of a little bit of what we've talked about in terms of looking for internships in this space, really finding ways and opportunities to develop that experience and those skills, and also at the same time, win-win, you get to confirm that you want to be doing it. It's really mutually beneficial. Again, just any opportunity, really diving into the trades, diving into anything you can, just to really continue to build that acumen and that experience. And talk to people, as many people as you can. I can't tell you how many times people reach out to me on LinkedIn just saying, hi, can we connect? And I'm so sorry if you are one of those people and I haven't responded to you yet. It has been, my light is like drastically changing as the sun goes down. But I do try to respond, and sometimes I'll respond and say, I'm so sorry, I can't right now, but can we in a couple of weeks? But take the shot, right? Reach
Yeah,
out, try to build those connections. 1 in 10 maybe will respond, but that one could be a really incredible connection and could be kind of an in for networking, if you will. If nothing else, then just having a casual conversation and getting to know somebody and what they do, then that's still a win.
absolutely. Networking is everything. It is so important.
And extra hard, I think, these days,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Pre-pandemic, it's like, oh, go to this event and you'll just kind of organically meet people. And hopefully, knock on wood, I'm looking for any wood. Hopefully, we're getting back to that place, right? But in the meantime, you can just roll with it and figure out how can we do this in a digital space. Like, again, keep an eye out for join groups, join clubs, join the things on LinkedIn, start tracking hashtags, and just kind of the deeper you go into this space, the more you'll find these opportunities to go to a free webinar or go, join this. And those are kind of the opportunities to learn more and again, connect with people with the same interest at the same time.
Yes, that's great advice. Our next question comes from Jake, and they've asked, how does one break into sponsorships specifically? And how do you maintain relationships with said sponsors that you work with?
Good questions, Jake. How do you break into it? I think it's all about experience, and kind of again pointing back to skills, because even coming right out of college, right, I certainly wouldn't say, well, experience in order to break into sponsorships. Like, no, you just say, well, this is what I've been working on for the last 4 years. These are the groups I was involved in. These are the clubs I was involved in. This is the leadership role that I took within my fraternity or sorority or, club. And again, like just kind of showing that initiative is really important. Um, and then any opportunity really to point back to internships and stuff as well is always great. But really, the skill set, the initiative, be relentless, be determined, know that you may get a couple no's before you get a yes, but know that it's because that yes is where you were meant to be. So you had to just keep powering forward until you found that perfect fit. Um, what was the other half of that question?
Maintaining relationships with
Oh, yes.
sponsors.
Yes. Again, one of my favorite parts of my job. It kind of circles back to the earlier question just about communicating. I think my approach is always to over communicate and to remember that every person that we talk to is a human
Mhm.
and is a person that has a very full plate with a very long to-do list, with family demands happening on the side, with a trip coming up, with a child that was just at the doctor. Like, it's we're people, and it's
Mhm.
really focusing in on that interconnectedness and making sure that we build a relationship as two people, is like that's what builds the foundation for us to be able to have meaningful conversations about what they need and what we as a brand can do and how we can help. So at the end of the day, my biggest piece of advice will just be, remember that every person has their own thing, and just treating each other like people. Sometimes it's so sad to sometimes that um, but just it's not communication in this job. It's never just an interaction or just a cold exchange. It's really being able to dive in and support each other. That goes for internally
Absolutely.
too, within teams.
Yes. And the great thing is the connections that you build, they don't have to be exclusive to a company. You're building that connection with that person. And
Yeah.
so, people like me, we still have a great relationship. And it applies to people internally and externally that you meet along the way and can
Mhm.
maintain relationships with throughout the years.
Yeah, and you nailed it, right, Emily? It's about staying in touch too. And really, I still have mentors, especially from past jobs, that I still reach out to regularly, and colleagues that I still consider friends, and Emily, partners that I still want to grab drinks with, even though we're not like officially on teams that collaborate. So it's fun. It just kind of continues to build this network of people.
Exactly. Our next question comes from your baby boy in the chat, and they have asked,
I love
you've
it.
talked some about your team. What are some of the things that you think are key to building a successful team?
My gosh, good question. Um, First of all, shout out to my team. They are incredible, and if I had to guess, definitely the best in the industry. Um, so let's see, building the best team. I think for me, everything comes back to communication. That's such a cheat answer, but it really does. My approach is always to be super communicative and transparent as much as possible. I really try to avoid the like side conversations or the politically driven aspects of anything. Like it, it's all out on the table, right? Like we're all in this together. This is truly a team collaborative effort to get from point A to point B. And for me, that means just being a support. And I may not always do this perfectly, but my goal is always um, to be in the weeds as much or as little as my team needs. I always trust my teams. I know that they are in that role for a reason. Like they're killing it. They've got this, and they know that they can raise a hand and say, "Hey, I need you over here or over here." And again, it's relationship building, right? Like sometimes we get on one-on-one, like let's go through that to-do list. There's a ton
Mhm.
happening. Like we've got to check it all off. And then it's remembering to stop and say, wait, like the point of the once weekly check-in is just to stop and say, how are you? Like what's
Right.
going on in your world? How, and again, we'll be this tomorrow. But how are you advancing in your goals? How can I help you? How can I remove roadblocks? So I think again, communication, transparency, hopefully making it a fun environment, one where people are excited to get on in the morning, just so that they can say hi and chat. I mean, we have a Discord where people can just hang out, but it's all just letting the team do what they do best, and they do it so well, and just empowering them along the way, and being a source of support, and being there for each other.
That's a beautiful answer. And you do create a really wonderful team culture, having worked with your team in the past. It is a really great environment over there. You're doing
Oh,
a great job.
they do it. They're the best.
They are. Question, or our next question, excuse me, comes from Flav Filth. And he has asked, what is the secret, in quotes, to seeking out and securing partnerships with organizations? How do you find the organizations to target? How do you hook them into the process and then move forward?
That is a good question. How do you hook them in? I like that. Feels very like really sink your teeth into them. So for us, we're structured in a really fun way in that I ladder up VP of Sales and Partnership. I oversee the whole partnership team, and there's a whole other sales team, but we work incredibly closely together. So everything that I say right now, I am not saying I do this personally. I'm saying I have watched and learned from some of the best. But from our team, I know that it's a lot of, again, understanding the space, understanding what open categories we have, right? Because if you have exclusive partnerships with a Logitech or a Lenovo, you can't get a secondary, so you have to look at what else is available. Apparel is available, and then it's taking a look at the market and saying, well, in an ideal world, who is the right fit? Who from a brand perspective would it feel that buzzword again, authentic, to say, hey, we've just announced this partnership. Who within that space would it be a mutually beneficial relationship? Like, we want to be able to support our partners and help them reach their goals, and really make sure that we're kind of in it together. So all of that, we're funneling. You find the right couple of people to reach out to. I cannot tell you how our team does that. It's magic. I don't know. They reach out on LinkedIn, they find connections, they cold call, they outreach. But if you can just get on that first call, right? It's about really explaining, hey, this is who we are. This is what we're doing in this space. This is what we're looking for, and is there interest there? And if there is genuine interest, then it opens up a whole lot more meetings and more pitch decks and more
Yes.
conversations to really figure out what then, if it's a good option, what does that partnership look like? What do we want it to do together? What can we build together? And then kind of solidifying those details. But in terms of really hooking them in, it's all about showing, the value that we bring, the audience that we reach, the collaborative activations that we can do together, and getting them excited about potential there.
Yes. Yes, exactly. That was an awesome answer. Thank you, Megan. Our next question comes from LJ. Do you feel that a career like this translates well to hybrid and/or remote work? Ooh, a good question. And if not, do you think there's a significant disadvantage to not living in places like LA or Austin?
Very good question. I like that you vacation. We do have a lot of teams out there. Um, I'm biased, and I say that because I have a history of being remote. My job before TSM was with McBeard, who was fully remote. We were then acquired by Fullscreen that was hybrid. Well, at least they allowed us to stay remote and be hybrid. And now with TSM, we have this beautiful space, this office headquarter in Playa Vista that is just amazing. But with COVID, it's been very fluid, right? And I'm really grateful that we've had a leadership team that said, like, come in if you want, and don't if you don't feel comfortable. Um, all that to say, I love going in occasionally because my cup fills up being able to see people in person, and really putting faces to names is just really incredibly beneficial. But I also know that I personally, and I'm kind of a question, but I'll get back to it. I personally work really well. I sometimes need to remove any extra distractions so that I can really focus on the calls that I have ahead of me that are usually stacked back to back to back, and not worry about jumping from conference room to conference room or finding a quiet space because the players are playing ping pong 5 feet away. It's like I just kind of gauge my week accordingly, like the days that I can go in versus not. In terms of being at a disadvantage, I personally don't think so, just because I think as an industry and as a society, we've had to, over the last 2 years, move so
Right.
far into the digital space. Like, maybe I would have said something differently 2 years ago and said, it's so important to be in the same city and meet in person and have that FaceTime. Do still think that that is the case. But it's not as mandatory, I think, anymore. Like, we've really honed in on the ability to have video calls and to take advantage of that. And I do think there's an element where you would want to, and probably need to, get out in person every once in a while, whether it's quarterly or something, just to have that FaceTime. Because at the end of the day, I still think that there is so much to be said for it. But um, short answer, no, I don't think so, but it also may depend on client and what they're looking for in particular.
Yes, for sure. And I would agree with your whole answer there.
The whole thing. There was a
The
lot
whole
of it.
thing. Yes, and there is some chatter in the chat about your background looking so great. Give us background tips, but I'm thinking that your background is so great because you've worked remotely. So you've really curated this wonderful aesthetic background.
For so long. Meanwhile, I'm realizing the sun is down and I don't like just But yeah, I mean, it sounds like a silly way to respond, but for me, it's all care. Like I'm in this room a lot. I'm in this space a lot. So it's important to be able to set up a space that brings you joy because you do spend so much time there. And actually, it's a shared office with my husband. He's not here right now, but he's on that side of the room. So this is all kind of a collab space. Half of those are his Funkos, and I just started contributing because I wanted equal representation. But yeah, really just the plants bring life in. And yeah, I'm on a lot of video calls, so it is also kind of important just to have it be not craziness behind me. But that's what backgrounds are
Yes.
for too, right? Like the fake
Yes.
ones that just are incredible. They're so great.
Yes, they really are. Goodness, the AR is changing everything.
Amazing.
We have still a few more questions for you, Megan, so I'm going to keep rolling through
Awesome.
them. LJ has asked, what internships and positions should we be looking for? Oh my goodness, we've already asked this question. My apologies. Our next one comes from PND, and he has asked, for someone who is just starting in the industry, are there some hard skills to master and are must-knows?
Hard skills to master. Well, it depends. Which part of the industry are we talking? Are we talking like just starting in the esports space or in partnerships or in account? All the above. I can kind of just
I'm going to assume
spit off.
esports space.
Hard skills to master. I think I don't know how you master the ability to be flexible. But being ready and willing to turn things around on a moment's notice and really being able to problem solve and just calmly take a step back and say, okay, everything is going south because all of these things out of our control have happened. How do we reassess? How do we reset? And how do we go forward from here? Actually, like tactical things within our world, within partnerships, it's written in verbal communication. It's really making sure to hone in on um, being as clear and concise as possible. Chatted a little bit about that, and then really just diving into the space. I think follow all the accounts on Twitter, follow all the orgs on LinkedIn, and really just dive in really deeply as much as you can. And I think that's the best way to truly immerse yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And PND did clarify in the chat that they meant partnerships, but you did answer that part. So your
Oh,
intuition
good.
is on point.
Oh, yay. We got
Well,
there.
PND has also asked, should esports brands continue to focus on targeting endemic brands? As it is such a competitive space, are non-endemic brands more valuable to esports coming out of the pandemic? Mm,
Okay, that's a really good question.
yeah.
I think that the same rule of thumb applies in that we want to build authentic partnerships. But I definitely think that there is going to be a cap to endemic partners, right? Because there's just only so so many. There are only so many categories
Right.
and brands that exist. So in order to truly continue growing as an org and reaching the revenue numbers that will really help you expand and change, it will be more and more non-endemics. Um, and I think that I don't know if it's because of the pandemic. Probably. I mean, we definitely saw the massive spike in gaming and esports because of the pandemic, right? Where everybody were locked in and everybody kind of turned to Fortnite for like half a second, and then moved on. But not people are still in Fortnite. No, just like there was these
Yes.
pinnacles, these peaks, um,
Peaks.
and
Exactly.
and I think that probably is what caught the attention of non-endemics and started
Hmm.
piquing their curiosity about the space. So I definitely think it's a great time to be taking advantage of that and really leaning into that and kind of fueling the fire there and helping them see the potential. Um, so contingent on non-endemics, not necessarily, but I think it's definitely always going to be an area of growth and opportunity just because there's so much potential. There's so many categories. There's so much that we can be doing.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Our next one comes in from Prem, and he has asked if a said corporation you want to partner with isn't necessarily familiar with the industry that your company is in, such as companies which focus on luxury products and esports oriented companies, for example. How would you go out in approaching that company and acquiring and establishing that potential partnership?
That's a great question, because a lot of what we do, especially with non-endemic, is education, right? It's
Hmm.
hand-holding. It's in a way that is very as clear as possible, right? Like I don't know why I'm struggling with this, but essentially it's a whole new world, and you have to put yourself in their shoes and say, if I was looking at this space for the very first time, if I hadn't been working in it for the last year and just engaging in it personally for years prior to that, like what would I need to know? What's important for them to hear and for them to see? And for us, it's really explaining. We just used this phrase the other day, like, this is our sandbox. Like, let me introduce you to my sandbox. Like, these are all of the game titles that we have teams playing in. Like, this is what our audience looks like. This is the reach that we have across our owned and operated social channels. So, across TSM and all of our players. This is what's happening in this space. And this is why and how it's applicable back to you and how we can really. Come together to create something super cool for this audience. So again, it's a lot of education, and all of our non-endemics have come in really open-minded and being like, "Hey, this is new to us. Can you kind of walk us through it?" And it's always a lot of fun because they come in so excited and just like teach us. This is a space that we want to be, and that's always a lot of fun.
Yes, I do love the education part and seeing people get it for the first time.
Yeah.
Well, our next question is from Jake, and he's asked, what are some of the key traits that you want to see from someone that you would want to hire?
Good question. Oh, I love this. And we're actually in the process, shameless plug, but we are hiring two coordinator roles for the partnership team. So I'm pretty sure that JD is posted on our website. Definitely check it out. But for us, I think we're it depends on the role, right? It always depends on the role, what specifically we're looking for. But I think at a very high level, to be successful, you need to be really organized, especially in this industry, because again, things can change on a dime. And being organized really allows us to be flexible and to change and to pivot. Being good communicator, always. Again, I feel like that's gonna that's my my word for the day. But really, just being a good communicator, being a good relationship builder, being personable. What else? And just being passionate about the space. I think be passionate about what you want to do and why it's TSM or why it's whatever org you're applying to. Just make sure that that's known, and I think that's all you can ask for of a candidate.
Great answer. Great answer. And yes, everyone should go and check out that job description now that Megan's given you the keys.
Yes, please.
Well, we're going to go a couple of moments over, if that's okay with you, Megan. I've got one more question for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. And apologies again for my Discord crashing earlier.
What keeps it interesting? Keep it
Yes,
exciting.
you spoke a lot about those needing to shift on a dime, and we did that this evening.
Yeah, it's a
So, our
first for
last
everything.
question, exactly. Our last question comes from Paul, and he's asked, although we do not see experiential marketing often within esports, are these kinds of activations worth pitching with the current trends?
I hope so. Experiential events, think, have only really not been happening because of COVID. I
Yeah.
think as a whole, the industry, the whole space is so young, and still so, I mean, it's going on a decade plus, but in the big scheme of things, that's still very young. that we're constantly building and growing and getting closer to that. And I really think that there's a lot that could have been happening over the last 2 years that we couldn't because of COVID. But you see things like TwitchCon coming back, right? Like they announced their dates. I'm super excited. And we want to do something there. We want to be able to produce an event, have a booth, and do some fun stuff. So I definitely think it's moving more in the direction of that being the case. I think we will be seeing a lot more of that now that we're, again, knock on wood, coming out of the pandemic. So
Yes,
yes, always worth it to answer the question. Sorry, like always pitch. That will always be my answer though, is like always pitch. There's never worst thing that can happen is somebody says no thanks or not right now or, but
exactly.
always pitch.
Yes, I totally agree. And I'm so excited to see these events returning.
I know, me
Can't
too.
wait. I cannot wait.
Yeah.
Well, Megan, it has been such a pleasure talking to you this evening. There were so many awesome questions and you had so many great
Yes.
responses. So thank you,
Thank you.
thank you, thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Oh
Do
my
you have
gosh,
any
my pleasure.
do you have any last words of wisdom before we wrap it up?
Oh my gosh, no. As I slip into darkness back here, thanks for your patience. No, seriously, such wonderful questions. If and especially if we didn't get to all of them, please feel free to reach out either on the TSMU Discord, find me directly on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to answer questions. The only piece of advice I would say is have grace with yourself, be patient with yourself. That's some of the best advice I've ever gotten from one of my mentors, is just really know that every step of the way is leading you in the right direction as long as you're doing something that you're excited about, even if it's not the whole thing, right? If you're doing something you're excited about, then you're moving in the right direction. So thank you guys for joining. Thank you for the wonderful questions. And again, happy to answer any additionals on the side.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you all for watching and attending. It was so great talking with you, Megan. I want to let you all know that the next episode is happening next Wednesday. I believe it is March 16th at 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern. So be sure to follow the channel so you know when we're live. Also, be sure to join the Discord. It is discord.gg/TSMU. Thank you so much again, Megan. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, Emily. Thanks, everybody.